Welcome everyone. My name is Karen Lawson. I'm co-owner here at Lawson's Finest Liquids. We're so pleased to have such a great showing here tonight. I was thrilled to initially meet Senator Welch at our soft opening here October 2018, 6 years ago, and even better to find out that he was a Lawson's Finest fan. So that always goes a long way. We're honored to host today's listening session with Senator Peter Welch and an esteemed group of panelists. As chair of the Senate Agricultural Committee's Subcommittee on Rural Development and Energy, Senator Welch is working to pass bills to help flood recovery, build out broadband, lower energy costs, and improve water infrastructure. I'd like to give a big thank you to all of you, my fellow community members, for coming here to share your thoughts and concerns with Senator Welch. And with that, I'm happy to welcome Senator Peter Welch here today, and with appreciation for your role in championing rural development in Vermont so that all communities thrive.
Thank you. Oh. Do I take that microphone?
No, you're good.
All right, here's the first question, all right? You're not supposed to drink at a political event. I mean, the candidate isn't, but you know what? I've got a 6-year term. In the old days, I'd be more cautious, but you'll forget, right? Karen, thank you so much. You know, it's wonderful to be here. Margaret and I had a beautiful drive up and coming down the valley, and it's just always so wonderful to be here, especially on this incredibly beautiful day. So I just want to express to you my gratitude that you all came out. I want to express my gratitude to Sean and Karen for the incredible work that they've done, you know, starting this Lawson's Finest, I think in their house or in a garage or in the basement, and then just expanding a little bit, and then, you know, with not only the incredible skill that it takes to be a craft brewer, but with the heart and the soul that is required in order along the way to face all the bumps that come up, and all the while to really treat the environment as sacred, to treat your employees as even more so. It's kind of what I think all of us think of is the best of Vermont. You really pay attention to quality, you pay attention to the people, you pay attention to your community, and you know what? If you do all that, it's gonna kind of work out. That's kind of what we believe, and this is a place, I mean, I'm amazed. Look at this, this is unbelievable. It started in a basement or in a garage, I can't remember which, but thank you so much. And I will speak just a couple of minutes because we've got tremendous panelists. But what's so important to me, among many other things, but really I think for all of us in Vermont, we actually believe in what rural America has to offer. And there's an enormous amount of stress in rural America because a lot of our communities have been pulled apart. A lot of the jobs that used to be there, and that was in manufacturing, not just the pressure on agriculture. Those went away. We're trying to get them back. But the pressures on rural America, especially with the costs that have been going up, and you know, in Vermont, we've got really going to get hammered with property taxes, among other things. But all of those pressures that go on a rural community where we want to thrive, those have to be challenged. And having the opportunity to serve in the Senate and to be on the Agriculture Committee and to be the chair of the Rural Development Subcommittee, you know, we've taken a real energetic effort towards doing things like building out broadband. We've taken things like not only building out broadband, but having the Affordable Connectivity Program, which provides $30 a month for folks who make like $15,000 a year, so that broadband line, that goes in the front of where they live, they can actually connect to it. And by the way, that's 4 million veterans across the country. Like paying attention to the importance of organic dairy, to no-till farming, to regenerative agriculture, doing things that provide financial opportunities for farmers who practice the most environmentally sound ways of farming. The agriculture community has to play a major role in our effort to reduce carbon emissions, but it has to be done in a way where they can make some money as they're doing something that's not only good for them in bottom line, but really beneficial to all of us. So my first time in the Agriculture Committee, I'm going back memory lane, was when I served in the state Senate. And that was in the 80s. And one of the things that I found among my colleagues on that was those values that they had in those rural communities that we're part of and proud to be part of, was that you did look out for your neighbor. You paid attention to what you had to do. You were responsible, you were independent, but you knew that we're all in it together. And if somebody got stuck in the road, you were there to pull them out. If you were able, you'd volunteer in the volunteer fire department. You'd do things that reflected that you not only saw personal responsibility as your way of conducting yourself, but it included your obligation to do things that made the community stronger. So personal responsibility wasn't just that you did the right thing. Doing the right thing was you volunteered for the local fire department. You were on the school board. You would pay attention to building a local institution, and it could be the community bank. But it was creating those networks of connection that allow all of us to feel some safety in the community where we live and feel some sense that when we were having kids, there were other people looking out for them. We weren't just on our own. And we all know with the pressures that we're seeing, with the tribalization of politics, with the impact of social media that's so disruptive to connection, to real connection, all of these are enormous pressures that are pulling people away from one another. And what we're doing here in the Valley, in Vermont, is trying to create ways to come together. And it's when we do that and focus on solving problems that all of us have. Like we all need affordable broadband. We all need a connection to a healthcare system that's accessible. Telehealth helps a lot. That when we do that, we can actually move through the differences that we have, even in Washington. And it's why so many of these pieces of legislation, like the Connectivity Act, where I'm co-sponsoring, I got J.D. Vance to work with me on a drug bill. Your good friend, Senator Ted Cruz. But the point here, it's actually a serious one, because obviously probably a lot of us don't agree with them on almost everything, right? But when I asked Vance, how's broadband for folks who are on the margin, making $15,000, $20,000 a year, his answer was those people are in the same situation the folks here in Vermont are. Roger, you've been really helpful on that. So that Vermont way of trying to approach things where you look for what we share in common, and that is problems that we face, the quality of our education, the cost of our health care, the access to broadband, the desire to have an agricultural production system that enhances the environment, not degrades it, then you can start making progress. And we do that in Vermont because we're practical, we're community-minded, and we think that if we do the work, we can get progress and get things done. So I just wanted to give a few introductory remarks and express to you my gratitude that I serve as one of your United States senators. It's really special to represent the state of Vermont. And the folks here, thank you so much for coming tonight, and I look forward to a good conversation with our panelists, and also questions and answers, and some statements probably disguised as questions. Thank you. What's that? Turn it off. Thank you.
Hello? Can everyone hear me? Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name's Ryan McLaren. I have the privilege of working for Peter here in our Vermont office, and also serving as your moderator tonight with our wonderful panelists. And at the end, we'll have some time for question and answers from the audience. But to start, we have Adeline Druart, the CEO of Lawson's Finest Liquids, here with us tonight. Adeline, you know, there is so much happening here at Lawson's, and obviously it all starts with the beer. But you all are making such big investments in green energy and your food waste, your social programming, and more. And so what's the secret sauce, other than beer, to what you're doing here at Lawson's, and why is it so important for you and for the organization to make these investments?
Awesome. Well, thank you. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Lawson's Finest Liquid. I hope you have some great brew on hand. It's such a pleasure to have you here. And I want to say thank you so much, Senator Welch, for all you've done to our Vermont community. We feel very fortunate to have you represent us in Washington, D.C. So thanks so much for being here tonight. So what is Lawson's secret sauce? Ryan, if you're okay with that, I'm going to reframe it to what is the secret brew here. Is that okay? Awesome. Well, of course, it starts with amazing products. You know, we pride ourselves here in crafting the finest and freshest craft beer. We actually got awarded Craft Brewery of the Year last year among 10,000 craft breweries across the country. So very proud of the product we do, and we have an amazing team of brewers here in our company, but we know that it's got to be beyond the product. And what inspires us and really excites us is the impact we want to have as a business. Senator, you were here when the opening, at the opening, pre-opening, we had 3 employees. Then we went to 50, and now we have 80 employees working here in the heart of Vermont. So leading with the impact we want to have is very important to our company, and then also caring for the community. And we define community starting with our amazing staff here at Lawson's Finest Liquid, but also the Mad River Valley community, and then Vermonters at large. And you're going to hear how this comes to life through our programs. So look around. Look at this tap room in the small village of Waitsfield, Vermont. It's a place where local comes together at the bar at any given time. At night, you can find a local contractor. You can find the sausage maker, Babette, who makes the sausage on our charcuterie board. You can find skiers. You can find riders. You can find fans that had drove from Chicago to come and drink Double Sunshine. And so it's amazing for me to watch all that community coming together and really experience not only Lawson's Finest Liquid, but Vermont hospitality at large. And so to me, there isn't a better place to talk about community and care than right here in our tap room. I mentioned we go beyond products here in our business, and this comes through life in the name of the SIP program, Social Impact Program, which has been embedded in our company since we started. The program is made of 5 pillars, a great place to work, Green is Grand, which is our focus on our environmental footprint, the Sunshine Fund, SIP of support, and good brew for our cause. And I want to talk a little bit about 2 key initiatives for us. You mentioned doing business the right way, and then it's gonna succeed on its own for the most part. For us, when we were thinking of our environmental footprint, we looked at solar as an initiative that was very important for us to bring on renewable energy to try to reduce our impact. And so right here in the backyard, you can see the largest solar canopy in the state of Vermont being built above our parking lots. We have solar panels above the brewery and above our 2 buildings, which totals an amount of pretty large investment, but also a lot of energy being produced. We're able to produce 100% of the equivalent of the electricity we use between the taproom and the brewery. So this was a multi-year investment plan. You know, as a small business, we can't do it all. We have to prioritize, but prioritizing that in an investment is the right thing to do for business and aligns with our core values. Another important program I wanted to share with you, which takes place right in this tap room, is our Sunshine Fund, which is aimed to give back to local charities. So basically, when you come here and enjoy an amazing beer, we ask guests, would you rather donate instead of tips to a local charity? And so we pay living wage to our staff so they don't rely on tip, and then we engage with our fans to participate in donating. And so to give you an idea, last year we donated over $300,000 to 24 local nonprofits. So this, thank you. And to bring this to life to the Total Sip program, which was established in 2018 when we opened this tap room, this beautiful, somebody said, this is the cathedral of beer. I believe so. The SIP program has donated over $2 million to over 300 nonprofits across the state of Vermont. This is, to me, the power of small business that cares deeply about community and giving back. So I'm going to bring us back to where we started, which is the impact we want to have. And as a Vermont family-owned business, our mission is to craft and deliver the finest and freshest craft beer to delight our fans and to cultivate healthy and vibrant community. This is embedded in our business. This is the mission that we want to thrive to deliver every day, and I hope you get to enjoy that tonight. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Adeline. Might have to move further away. That's better. I imagine that fulfilling that mission might be a little bit harder if you didn't have high-speed and reliable internet access. So next up we have Roger Nishi, the VP of Industry Relations from Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom. And Roger, you've been a tremendous advocate for rural broadband deployment both in Vermont and nationally. And so why has that been so important to Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom? And what can we learn from your experience here in the Valley that we could apply across the country and around Vermont?
I really need to just start with the history of the company. I mean, since 1904, or over 120 years ago, it was all about bringing comparable services to rural areas that people in the more populous areas had. And back then, the company started that with open wire along fences and connected to various towns in the valley. And through the years, we've continued to upgrade the network over and over and over. And we added cable TV over the years. One of the things with the copper network, so that we built over the years, is we've continually looked across the U.S. and seen how other services had improved, and we knew that we needed to keep up because we did not want the valley and the citizens that live here in the valley to be left behind. So we've constantly been upgrading over the years. Now, it's been with the copper network for many, many years. All of you out there probably say, yeah, we had crappy DSL, or we have crappy DSL now. Well, you're not going to have that forever. Believe me, what started off as dial-up over a copper network was upgraded to the first generation of digital subscriber line. Then we upgraded to a next level, and to the next level, and to the next level. And we did that, bringing greater speeds to everyone over the years because there wasn't enough money or time to get fiber to everyone. Getting fiber to everyone is a complete overbuild of the existing network. It's taken out all the copper. All the other upgrades just involve changing out the electronics. So that's why the fiber is taking so long to get to everyone. And we wouldn't be where we are today without the ARPA funding and the other funding that Peter's helped push at the federal level. Because as we've always said at the company, it takes time and it takes money. When there was time to do the building, the money wasn't there. Now the money's there. Through the ARPA funding and the various other funding mechanisms are coming out, the money's here. There's a program called BEAD, and it's gonna bring $42 billion to the US to build broadband, and 229 is coming to Vermont. And we're gonna participate in that program to make sure that we can get fiber to all of our customers in a quicker fashion. Now, all of you are saying, it's taken too long. It does take time, and that's where we ask you to be patient, but we realize you can only be so patient, because we all, if we could, I'll put it this way, if we could have had fiber to each and every one of you with the speeds and the reliability yesterday, it would have been done yesterday. If I could snap my fingers and have it done now, it would be done now. But
Just wanted to add something on that. You know, this question of broadband, we were having a struggle with it in the House. I was making the case to my urban colleagues who just didn't get it, that we had a problem in rural America. So I created the Broadband Caucus, and I got like 20 Republicans and 20 Democrats, and it was folks from rural areas, because the folks in rural areas don't have broadband. You can be in a red district or a blue district. You needed broadband. And we had a hard time convincing our urban folks. COVID came. Case closed, right? You couldn't get a doctor's appointment. You couldn't go work. Your kids couldn't do their homework. You had to teach them. But you couldn't apply for a job. So the case was made, and that's when we got the money for the build-up. And then Vermont, I think, has done a great job with these community union districts. But the actual implementation is really hard work. But the case that we made throughout, and I think ultimately have been successful, although as Roger says, more work to be done, was the argument that was made in the 30s about electricity. You know, there was no economic case to be made to get that wire to that barn at the end of the dirt road in Facein. It just wasn't, right? But there was a social case to be made, that we're in it together. That wherever you are, in an urban area or in a rural area, you're part of Vermont, you're part of America. And what I feel so good about is that with all the rancor you see in Congress, we succeeded on that case. You know, there's implementation challenges that are really hard, okay? My job is hard at times. Roger's is harder because he's actually got to do the work. But the bottom line is, I feel really good that we ultimately, I think, have been successful in taking that 30s model, that this is an America that needs electricity, and saying this is an America that has to have broadband.
And Peter and his committee really did push this at the federal level and really brought it to light. And there are people in the urban areas that still don't believe it's true, but you've helped to bring them along. And in doing so, we are much farther along now than where we would be without all this funding. Waitsfield and Champlain Valley Telecom is a recipient of $18 million in ARPA funding through the Vermont Community Broadband Board, and we're actively spending that now. And later this year, there's what I call BEAD funding. We're going to participate in that to get as much money into our areas so that we can continue to build as quickly as possible in all the areas we serve. Right now, there are areas, and you're probably saying, why don't I have fiber yet? Well, many of you have better DSL than some others, and we're focusing on the areas with very poor DSL first. And that's part of the way the grant funding works, is we had to really go out to those that were unserved and underserved first in comparison to those who were defined as served. But it is our goal to get fiber to everyone, and we would like to be done within the next 3 to 4 years. And that's going to be a challenge.
Thank you so much, Roger. Next up, we have Melissa Bowney, the Executive Director of Central Vermont Economic Development Corporation. And Melissa has been quite busy. We see her frequently in many settings, not least of which is a lot of the flood recovery work we're doing in Barre, Montpelier, so I want to acknowledge that. But I think Melissa is a neighbor of the brewery. And I'm not going to say a regular, but maybe a regular. And so, Melissa, the Valley's a special place. I learned to ski at Sugarbush. I get to go mountain biking at Vermont Adaptive. It's got so much going for it. And curious from your perspective, what is the special sauce, the special brew, so to speak, about the Valley? What's helped it thrive? And what are some of the challenges you see into the near and longer term future that could threaten the continued success of the Valley?
Thanks, Ryan, for the question. So it's nice to see everybody. I'm Melissa Bowney, the Executive Director of Central Vermont Economic Development Corporation. So we're a nonprofit that serves all of Washington County and 3 towns in Orange. We provide free services for businesses at any phase. As Ryan mentioned, that has looked like flood recovery work for a lot of this year, for a lot of the communities outside of the Mad River Valley. And I do want to thank the Mad River Valley. Obviously, you've seen some floods. I've seen some floods here. And your support of Barre and Montpelier and other rural communities that were flooded was noticed and impactful. But I live here, so the more that I can do my work here in this community, the happier I am. And this isn't a terribly hard question as far as panel questions go. What makes the place I live special? So I have a creative writing BFA, typically a lucrative degree, if you know anything about creative writing BFAs. But I was able to get a good job with a livable wage when I was 21 years old here in Waitsfield with Shannon Gilligan at the Choose Co. publishing company based here in Waitsfield. And that was a job I had for almost 2 decades. And I traveled around the world with that job. And the moment that I would feel home, and this is probably true for some of you in this room, is the moment I passed Kenyans. And that's still true even if I'm just going to Montpelier. That's the moment that I feel good again. And that's one of the special things about the Mad River Valley. But the beautiful landscape and the beautiful community here have inspired some really incredible strokes of genius. Choose Your Own Adventure books being one of them. The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison was written here in the Mad River Valley. Merrill's shoes were founded here in the Mad River Valley. And so many other interesting, innovative, stroke of genius types of creations were made here in the Mad River Valley for the first time. In my work, I think about equity a lot and making sure that the opportunity to have that stroke of genius is brought to everybody. And when I think about our workforce issues, our population, which has a swell of age that is not a workforce age, we have decreasing school-age children, those kinds of issues that employers think about. I also think about all the potential entrepreneurs and all the potential excellent ideas and what the next Choose Your Own Adventure books or Green Mountain Coffee Roasters is. It's probably in this room just waiting to be born. And I like to think that we can make opportunities for lots of people to have those strokes of genius here in the Mad River Valley and support them on that journey. I like the sense of community that's here and the sense of a social safety net. I've always felt the whole time I've been here that if life really handed you lemons, you can go get a job at Mahirons, and that will be there for whatever your life is handing you. And I like knowing that we're in that kind of community where whatever you wind up with, you're going to have a friend and a neighbor. The challenges that we're looking at in the Mad River Valley are region-wide. We're looking at a housing shortage. We're looking at a housing shortage at every level, affordable housing to larger family homes. We're looking at childcare as a shortage. I work with a lot of small women-owned companies that are excellent and interesting. And if you are a woman and you own a company and you'd like to have a child, there is nobody that will support that part of your life financially, and that's a challenge to figure out. My organization is running a program right now that's state funded called the Small Business Technical Assistance Exchange. It is a program that gives small grants to small business owners, and it has an equity backbone. So we're looking at business owners that have faced some kind of historical disadvantage. They might be immigrants or women or from the LGBTQ plus community, BIPOC community, something that's made their journey to entrepreneurship have an extra challenge. And we are really recognizing how these challenges that all business owners are facing can make a deeper challenge for women in business or new Americans in business. And these are things that we're trying to find resources for so that the great community and the great opportunities of the Mad River Valley can be shared by the next generation of geniuses. So that's all I'm trying to do. But I'm so glad to be here, and thank you. And one of my great partners is Sarah Waring.
Thank you so much, Melissa. And our last panelist is Sarah Waring, the USDA Rural Development Director for Vermont and New Hampshire. And for those of you that do not know Sarah, you should know Sarah. USDA Rural Development is key to Peter's work on the Rural Development Subcommittee. It's an extraordinary resource for Vermonters, and Sarah, in the hands of Sarah Waring, is transformative for our state and for rural communities. So Sarah, can you talk about the work that USDA Rural Development does for Vermont, and how are you thinking about that work moving forward?
Thanks so much, Ryan. First of all, happy Friday. It's really nice to be here on a Friday, right? And know maybe what we're going to be doing when this listening session is done. It's good to have a plan. I appreciate that, Peter. I also just want to say thank you to the Lawsons for hosting us and to all of your staff. And I especially want to say thank you to our senator. I've had the opportunity in this job to work with him and with his team and to visit many places across the state. And I have to share that for those of you who don't know him, I don't really think of Peter Welch as a politician. I think of him as a true public servant. The way he approaches his work is fundamentally collaborative, intentional. He engages with folks, and it's just such an honor to be able to work alongside someone who we've elected to do that work on our behalf. So thank you, Peter, for all that you do. Yeah. So I wanted to start by building off the idea that there is no economic argument for investing in rural America. That is fundamentally why our agency exists. So under the United States Department of Agriculture, which has many agencies under it, Food and Nutrition Services, our Forest Service, we fight wildfires. It has our Natural Resources Conservation Service. It helps with soil health and supports farmers who are doing nutrient management. It has Farm Service Agency and provides loans. Rural development is often the best hidden secret. We are a merger of many historical components of government-funded programs for rural America that have become a single agency. So what that means is the Farmers Home Administration And many of the electrification programs, many of the railroad programs, infrastructure programs that invested in the expansion across rural America, bringing both jobs and quality of life to small communities, became a part of what is now rural development. So I like to think of us as being an investor, and we are a social impact investor, just to use the slang, the hip slang. I'm not sure that most of my staff think of themselves as social impact investors, but I'm going to get them there. Eventually, they're going to think that. What we do is find projects and partners that are providing economic opportunity and increasing quality of life for rural communities across the country, and we invest in those projects and those partners. We have 74 grant and loan programs. So even though before this job I had actually been an applicant to rural development and had applied for some of those grants and loan programs, I actually had to make myself flashcards when I got the job because there are so many programs that we offer and so many types of eligible applicants that we work with. Our mission is implemented through 3 specific areas. One is housing. We are working across the country to provide multifamily and single-family housing to low and very low income individuals and households. That looks like direct loans. We have 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 direct home loans in Vermont and New Hampshire right now, and folks pay their mortgages to us. Those are below market rate, and they really are based on your income level and what you can find, which nowadays is not very much. We also build multifamily housing with our nonprofit housing developers. We then also are invested in our small rural business ecosystem. Often it's through partners like Melissa's organization who can run revolving loan funds and technical assistance programming with federal dollars and taxpayer dollars. But it also is direct loans and grants to for-profit entities. So anything that can drive down your cost, whether it might be a value-added producer grant to a business, a farmer that is adding value by doing a processed food product, or it's a Rural Energy for America grant that allows you to reduce your carbon emissions and save your bottom line on your energy costs by installing solar, upgrading your HVAC system, or changing something that increases your energy efficiency over time. The last one, and one that I know for the town of Waitsfield in particular is important, is infrastructure funding. So we fund both above and below ground infrastructure, telecom and broadband, electrical utilities, and then also water and wastewater below ground. We also have a grant and loan program specifically for nonprofits and for municipalities that helps you put in a sand shed, helps you build a town hall, helps you finance a museum, or, as has been the case, unfortunately, in the last 5 years, we're providing direct loans to all of our rural hospitals right now. Their business model is incredibly tough. Not only did Congress pass the Emergency Rural Healthcare Grant Program during COVID, but we also work to provide them with below market rate, long-term loans to allow them to survive the challenge of the traveling nurse and workforce issue and the reimbursement through Medicare and Medicaid issues. So we're heavily invested in your healthcare system. We're heavily invested in your childcare system. There are very few nonprofit childcare entities in the state of Vermont that have not either received funding from your taxpayer dollars, thank you all very much for paying taxes, or that are direct loans if they are nonprofit or for-profit entities. So we are a resource both for economic development and community improvement. The question though, Ryan, is what am I excited about doing? Something like that. So I like to call this the magic wand question, right? If I could wave a magic wand, one of the things that is challenging about the work that we do in federal agencies, and no offense to anyone in this room, but the instructions we get from Congress, is that our money comes in very specific categories and buckets for very specific types of eligible applicants. When I just described our 3 mission areas, one of the things that is incredibly hard for us to do is to help to finance workforce or missing middle housing, because those are not low and very low income residents. Therefore, it is not subsidized. Therefore, I can't fund it in my housing programs. So maybe it can be a business program. Well, not really, because there's a bright line between my housing funding and my business funding, and residential housing is not considered a business. Weird, right? So one of the things that I would love to be able to see if I could wave a magic wand is the cross-pollination and coordination between our own programs within our agency, but also with other federal funding sources. I would love to be able to show up in a community with flexible funding in both loans and grants and say, what is it that you need? And let us create an underwriting package that matches those needs. The way our funding flows right now, we have to run it through specific programs that in many cases have been in the Farm Bill for many, many decades and are no longer representative of the way our rural communities work. So if I could, and this is like, I really shouldn't say this because, but if I could, I would love to throw out the Farm Bill and start again and call it a Farm and Food System Bill and include economic development as one of the strongest pieces of that Farm and Food System Bill.
Just one comment.
Yeah.
Sarah Waring for Secretary of Agriculture.
It's a big job. My only final point will be, we all know because we live here that all of those things are interconnected and that it is extremely hard to create a capital stack for a community project that has 25 sources of funding, all of which come with various different regulatory and compliance related issues. It is getting harder. And if we could remove some of that burden and be able to cross-pollinate between housing and agriculture, between farming and community projects, between childcare and housing, we would be able to have all of what is needed to support our rural communities in the ways that they would like to be supported. Right now we do the best that we can, and maybe someday we'll rewrite the Farm Bill. But it's pretty big, so.
Thank you, Sarah.
You know, I want to follow, Sarah, I actually am totally in agreement. You know, when we were doing the COVID relief, the big question, we had to get money out. It was a disaster. Schools were closed, factories were closed, everything was closed. The question was how much flexibility to give the states and the local communities. And my argument, and Bernie shared this with me, was that we've got to give them maximum flexibility because the decisions can best be made at the local level, right? So what you're describing is, I think, really where we have to go. It's always wrestling with the accountability question because you've got to maintain accountability, right? You can't have self-dealing. But there is no question that if you've got trust and accountable local officials, then it's much better to have that flexibility so that you can solve the problem as opposed to spend all the time trying to figure out how to fit a square peg into a round hole. So I really support what you're suggesting.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And we're about to get to the portion I think you've all been waiting for, which is our Q&A section. But before we do that, I do think we should give one big round of applause to the people that made this happen, which is Karen Lawson and the Lawson's Finest Liquids team. Kara Cheslin is back there, who is essential. And also to my colleagues on Senator Welch's staff who helped put this together and are running around here, signed you in. They've done a lot to help. So. One of those colleagues is Fauna. She's right here. She will be, she's available to, she'll be walking around with a mic to, for anyone who wants to ask a question, raise your hand. We'll try to get to as many folks as we can. Part of that means she might take the mic from you if you go on a bit too long. So try and keep your questions as short as you can. We'd love to hear from as many folks as we can. And feel free to ask a question of Peter, of the panelists, whatever comes to mind right now. So we'll get going.
Can we get the mic to be turned on? Or maybe
Thanks, everyone. I'm Abe Collins. I'm with the Land Care Cooperative, a group of farmers around Vermont. Our business model is healing land, growing topsoil very fast, which is a deep answer to a lot of things, including flood prevention. We're from the grassroots up. We've been working for years. Sarah's a good ally of ours. But we have the ability, through all of the work that we do, including advanced science, to soak in every drop. One implement we invented called the Vermont Rip Sower is able to decrease runoff 50% with one event in one afternoon from our farm fields. It's been super challenging to find the kind of high-level support because we don't fit into carbon markets. We don't believe in any of that and all this kind of stuff. But we want to serve our communities. And this is farmers and foresters and hiring farmers and foresters to heal our watershed homes with justice and economic democracy. So I'd love any ideas about ways that we could work with federal government to help the farmers to do this thing of healing our homes.
So I have the benefit, having learned about Abe's work and systems before, and yeah, just hold it lower. Can you still hear me? You can. Okay. One of the challenges. Wow. I'll just talk loud. There we go. One of the challenges, of course, is when you have a business model that doesn't fit in the categorizations that have been made, right, at the national level. And for me, the other one that makes sense to invest in that we do not often invest in are manufactured housing communities, right? This is another place where economic justice, social justice, environmental justice, and our watershed homes come together. And similarly, because of their business model, I can find, it's so hard for me to find a program that allows me to invest in them. So, you know, Abe has one of those ideas that is the next idea that's coming out of Vermont that's going to change the world. And I think what's hard about being the first one to do something like this is that the road that you climb is steeper than anybody else's who follows behind you. So I don't have an easy answer, unfortunately, for Abe. But what I will say is the commitment to continue to try to find that answer exists. And that there are many people who are going to try to continue to find that answer because, not unlike Everybody Eats that we did during COVID, it checks all the boxes. It checks food security, it checks supporting our viable farmers, and it checks supporting our business and food systems. But again, we categorize those, so you can't fund them all at once. So I don't have an easy answer, unfortunately.
Who's that?
Thank you. My name's John Boughton. I'm from over in White River Junction, so I'm over in that metropolis over there, away from the rural parts of Vermont. This is more a statement, but I'd like to get responses, please, if you think of them. My story is that my wife was diagnosed with dementia about 4 years ago. She died last September. It was a hard schlep. We were very lucky. We're in an area where we have broadband. We were able to make Zoom meetings with folks. I was able to care for her largely with help from the Dartmouth Aging Resource Center, which offered things like support networks and other sorts of things. So I learned a lot about it. My concern is that there are people in the state of Vermont that are not as close to the metropolitan Upper Valley area that really can use broadband, and it's important. The other piece that I want to link to is that there's some legislation coming through Congress that'll be coming to you, Senator Welch, which will be to encourage or to provide more information to individuals so that they will begin to be able to understand and recognize early signs of dementia, because that's the only time you can really do anything about it. This is a progressive disease, so catching it early is critical in order to extend life, productive life. The other piece is that it would also be providing training, and this training would be going towards primary care providers. The last 10 years, there's been a lot of research done around dementia and Alzheimer's. There's been tremendous progress made. People that were trained before 10 years ago aren't getting it. So we need to be able to bring that up. And a lot of this is all dependent upon having broadband access. So comments? Thank you.
Well, I mean, first of all, I think I speak for everybody. What a wonderful husband you've been. Thank you for taking such good care of your partner. Second, that is the reason we need broadband, right? And wherever you are, dementia can strike. And it's a very isolating situation for the partner and the people who love the person who has suffered from the dementia. What helps you get through is your love for your partner and your connection to, hopefully, if you're lucky, kids and neighbors. And so it is a reason why we have to have broadband, just like electricity. And that decision has been made. It's an implement. I really do believe that socially, as a country, we've made that decision that whether you're in Randolph or you're in New York City, you get broadband. There's an implementation challenge. That's what Roger is talking about. But in the rearview mirror, if you look at where we were 5 years ago in Vermont versus now, and hopefully in 5 years from now, we look back, and the concern you're expressing for a person who's not in the White River area where there's all those things has the benefit of access that you had. And I just want to end by expressing my gratitude to you to use the experience you've had, painful as it was, to advocate on behalf of others. Thank you.
Hi, Peter. I want to talk a little bit about education. Here in the Valley, we have a small, I don't know if you know about it, design and build school called Yes Tomorrow, and it's right down the road. And it's been, for the last month, it's been running a series of lectures on how to better afford housing in the Valley. And they also have a little project going on with 10 cluster houses, which combine the wastewater, the power, the access, and several other incidents that are really critical to affordable housing. And I was hoping that you might, in your copious free time, to visit them and see what they're doing and how they're doing their small part to make affordable housing part of the whole picture here in Vermont.
So it's the kids? It's a school?
Yes, it's a small design and build school.
That is so cool. I mean, what's a better way for kids to get involved in the bigger world? We'll get the kids involved. All right, Ryan, can we go? Thank you. I mean, look, housing, as Sarah was saying, we know it's incredible. And where you have a society where people who are working can't afford to live where they work, it's upside down, right? So bottom line, There's got to be housing, the people who are working here at Lawson's or teaching at the school or on the fire department, that they can live without a 4-hour commute, right? So we know that's gotten ahead of us because for lots of reasons, and it's not unique to Vermont, it's all around the country, it's totally unacceptable. And it takes real action at the local level, at the state level. Some zoning and local rules really make a difference in terms of it. And it takes some good, thoughtful planning. We're going to have more dense housing in some places, in all places. But the fact that you're engaged in it, and everyone is, in planning commissions, zoning commissions, and the state legislature really matters. The federal government mainly can come up with some tax incentives. There's some help. It's usually been focused on affordable, but you know what? There's not a housing for folks who are nurses, who are firefighters, who are police officers. And that is really, really unacceptable. So thank you for the work you're doing. I'm ready. We got to talk to the powers that be here, but I'd like to do that. Thank you.
Do you have something to add, Roger?
Don't keep it going.
May I add that a lot has been done in the valley, and Carrie, you were there early this year when the chamber sponsored a meeting with all the representatives, and housing was a big topic during that discussion, and it really raised the issue of and changed some people's opinion on how Act 250 needed to be changed, and so that really did open the discussion up at the State House this year. And in addition, with the ARPA funding, there are people here working on the water system, which if that goes through, it will make it so where we can have more housing in the towns. And I'm not the expert on it. I think Chach is the expert on it, so you can talk to him afterwards.
Thanks. Who's up next, Vana?
Hello, thank you. My name is Ernest Caswell. If you know me, my name is Buster. I work on a farm in Vermont, and I'm in Milton. The farm is in Addison County. And working on a farm is challenging, but very rewarding, very, very much so. And everyone who works on farms have the same challenging of accessing affordable housing. Farm workers, even more challenging because of the nature of where they work. They work in rural communities. And that's where we need to build the homes. On the national level, the USDA has federal funding specific for farm worker housing and other housing initiatives. Very useful, very challenging, very difficult to navigate, and not always taken up as a resource. So therefore, the challenges and some of the needs is combining our resources with USDA, with R&D, with HUD, with the state of Vermont, and every resource available so we can build homes for farm workers, just like we built homes for senior citizens and homeless folks. And senior citizens, we address those things. We make progress. We built homes for seniors. We built homes we built homes for homelessness. Much progress has been made, but it takes a partnership. It takes hearing folks from the ground, advocacy, our farmers and our leaders coming to a table to have a discussion about farming, in housing, a much needed one to grow our agricultural communities. Now, farm worker housing, just a couple of years ago, has made great progress, not using the USDA, but using our great state of Vermont, through the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, with work being done through Champlain Housing Trust with another partnership, including Efficiency Vermont. I can't name the list. If you haven't seen the list, please look at it and come to a table. Because to grow our agriculture, to feed our people who need the food that are needed on the food shelves, needed in our communities, we must address those housing needs. So please come to the farm worker housing table with all your resources, every one of them, and combine many of them. So
That's good advice.
Buster, thank you.
Really good advice.
Who do we got next?
Hi, I'm Representative Mary Catherine Stone. I represent Burlington, but I'm here because I serve on the House Committee on Education, and therefore I look at the state holistically. I'm also originally from a very rural small town in Alabama, so being here feels like home. Public education is at a crisis point right now, nationwide, including here in Vermont. We oftentimes like to think of ourselves as a snow globe of exceptionalism, but we're not. And we're seeing that as school budgets are failing across the state right now. What we know is that schools are doing more than just reading, writing, and arithmetic. And the cost of the things that schools are grappling with, for instance, the cost of mental health, the cost of ensuring that kids have food, is high. And what I'm seeing is when I'm looking at federal funding, a lot of the funding is geared towards states and systems that are bigger than Vermont. The whole population of our state isn't as big as some metropolitan areas in places like Alabama, where I'm from, Atlanta, Georgia, and so I would like to hear your thoughts and seek your help on drawing down more federal funds to help all of our schools, particularly schools in rural areas in Vermont.
As you know, I served in Montpelier for many years, and school funding was always a very contentious issue. I mean, what's more important than education? Hard to think of anything for our kids, right? So it's got to be a priority. Education is also, as we know, a local responsibility. It always has been. The school boards have to struggle. My wife is the chair of a school board, by state school board for many years, and has had to deal with those budget issues. But I think there's two things. Number one, to the extent we can help with the federal government, we cannot, the federal government, make good decisions about local education. That's not my job. You know much better in your community what's good or not. You've got to work with the teachers. So we've got to keep the responsibility local. Where we might be able to help is we've got school buildings that are falling apart, and we have a property tax base that can't meet the need. And I've been very supportive on the infrastructure level, trying to get money back to help our communities across Vermont, across the state, across the country, to be able to get proper facilities. And that obviously leaves some room. But the other thing you're saying, I think, is a really, really serious question for Vermont. I mean, what should we expect of our schools? Bottom line, reading, writing, and arithmetic, right? You got to learn how to read. You got to learn how to think. You got to learn how to write, the basics. There's been a lot of extension of additional services, and how much what can work, what can't, what can we afford, and what we can't. That is a really serious problem. But I got to tell you, and you know it, you have the responsibility as the legislature. Carrie, you're there as well. I'm hearing from literally Pownell to Derby line, from Brattleboro up to Highgate Springs. People are Vermonters can't afford the property taxes they're paying. So that raises a real challenge. And maybe I can help, and I hope I can, on some of what would be a smashing additional burden, that is to try to upgrade the facilities that need it, okay? And I actually think that could be a proper role for federal funds. But when it comes to running the local school, that's always been a local and state responsibility. And we're at that point. I'm hearing from legislators like you, from parents, from property taxpayers, that the concerns they're having is about what the quality of education is for their kids, how much can they afford, what is the right way to proceed. So thank you for bringing that up. But I think what you're talking about is something I'm hearing people, not just in the legislature, but Vermonters and parents, do we have to have some real constructive discussion about what to do and how to do it? Thank you.
We have time for one more question. Right, Ryan? Yeah. But we're going to be here, and we can mingle and talk. Here you go. This side of the room.
Thank you. Senator Hyde. Dan Jones from Montpelier. There's an issue that hasn't been brought up tonight. I guess I'm going to have to direct it to you. Many of our towns, Montpelier leading them, are now going to be subject to repeated climate change issues. The flooding last summer and in December is doing rapid damage. We've had a hard time rebuilding. I know you're trying to help, but the next step is that the climate crisis is basically going to continue, and we're going to have more floods. And we have a lot of towns in the state, a lot of cities that are sitting in valleys. So the flooding and the land use is going to have to shift, and we're going to need some help from the feds in actually foreseeing this rather than just saying, well, we're going to come in with emergency response. If Montpelier gets flooded again, your state capital is going to be a ghost town. Okay, people are not going to rebuild their businesses a second time, okay? They're already suffering downtown because the number of state workers now working remotely means that there's no longer the people showing up at the shops, at the restaurants, et cetera, to keep things going. I believe the same thing's happening in Barrie. I think it's happening in other places around the state. We're now at the point where we're going to need a response that is more dynamic, more forward-thinking than we have, which is rebuilding what we have, because it's not going to work the next time. And I'd really like to know what you think that could be done in that area.
Well, thank you. Two things, all right? In Washington, when it comes to climate change, I'm working with some of the best minds in the 17th century, okay? But there's kind of good news, bad news. And the good news is that for the first time in the history of our country, there was major legislation, Dan, you actually were a big contributor in that, to have public policy acknowledge and face the reality of climate change. And the billions of dollars that were in the Inflation Reduction Act and the ARPA Act has leveraged billions and billions of dollars more in the private sector that is going into the transition from clean energy to trying to upgrade our transmission system, to promoting efficiency and retrofitting of our homes to use less energy, all of the things that are necessary to bring down carbon emissions. Because that, its core has to be the structural approach. We've got to get carbon emissions down. We can't be continuing to increase the temperature, right? So that is, and by the way, that's a huge success. It takes time for implementation. Listening to Roger talk about the practical capacity to actually get the broadband to the home. That is hard work that has to go on every day. But the public policy is there. It's in jeopardy. This next election is about whether we roll it back and repeal it. That's literally what, when it comes to environment, is one of the questions that our voters are going to have to face. So that fight continues, but it was the first time that we really succeeded in getting major public policy and major money behind taking practical steps that a lot of people here are doing, like the way this building was designed and the way it was built. The second thing is, yes, we can get money back, but there is a transition here that's wicked. We just did a walk around Barry, okay? And this is heartbreaking to me. You know, we did the tour the tour of Vermont right after the July the July floods, as I did after Irene. And my colleagues in Washington will ask me, how's it going in Vermont? And I really have two answers. On the one hand, things are moving on, right? The businesses are back, the state is working, we're all kids are going to school. But on the other hand, if it was your business, if it was your home, if it was your farm, you are still struggling. You are still struggling. And when we walked around Barry and I'm meeting folks who are still out of their homes and they can't get a buyout and they don't know whether they can get in and they're living 50 miles away in a mobile home, I mean, that is hard. And that's going to continue to happen. It's not like we can finally just wave that away. So what I'm proud of in Vermont, tough as it is, because what can I say to a family when I'm talking to them outside of their home that's boarded up and it's up to here where all the mold went and they tore out all the sheetrock? You know, there's real suffering there. But it's why we have to have that structural approach to really get down the carbon emissions. And that is an ongoing battle because the fossil fuel folks are, you know, we're producing more fossil fuel in this country than ever in the history of our country. We're the biggest oil producer in the world and gas producer in the world. And that's good for some folks, but it's not good for most of us, right? We've got to make that transition. So in Vermont, what we did after Irene, Governor Champlain, I think, did a great job on this, and Governor Scott is following in this. When we're trying to rebuild back, we made the case after Irene, and it's now part of policy, that we can build back better with more resilience. So it used to be in FEMA pre-Irene and pre-Vermont advocacy that if you had, you know, an 18-inch culvert, you could replace it with an 18-inch culvert, even when everybody knew you needed 36 inches, okay? So we were able to improve that. And again, that was some flexibility, which, you know, Sarah's mentioned and I think is so important. So the reality is this is going to be hard work ongoing because it's not as though you can flip the switch and suddenly move the Capitol and all those buildings on Main Street, you know, up 10 feet, all right? So it's ongoing. But, you know, we're, I guess, so thank you for that. But, you know, what I want to say at the end, are we at the end? Sarah? You go ahead.
I was just going to add, Dan, and I think it's an incredibly important point about the difference between our mitigation work and the funding we can do for mitigating future events and our adaptation work, right? And I think the Inflation Reduction Act, as the Senator has said, is an incredible gift, and it's a gift that we have to protect because we are running out of time on it. And Congress has already clawed back some of the funds that federal agencies have under that Inflation Reduction Act because honestly, it's hard for us to spend it fast enough and get it out the door. And what's been fascinating to watch is how much the uptake is on the programs that are being rolled out, and then how quickly, and I'm speaking knowing that there are people in the audience who have applied for funding that they are waiting months to be able to get under this Inflation Reduction Act, in part because we don't have the staff anymore to get them out, right? It is a perfect storm of challenges right now to get federal funding to flow quickly so the Inflation Reduction Act can prove its value. But the one other comment that I would just add into the conversation is that the adaptation around land use is our next biggest thing we have to tackle. And the transition in Vermont really should be about land use planning by watershed. And if we are not thinking about the watersheds and our watershed homes, as Abe said earlier, then we are going to lose communities. We're going to lose post offices. Sorry, but that's the building I work in, and we're still not back, right? We're going to lose post offices. We're going to lose schools. We're going to lose those manufactured housing communities that are in the floodplain because that's land that no one else wanted, right? And we can't continue to do that. So thinking about the way, and maybe this is part of what Act 250 should be beginning to think about, thinking about the way we plan for land use based on watersheds rather than thinking about it in our geopolitical boundaries, which no longer make a lot of sense, right? We need to think regionally, but we need to think regionally based on our ecosystems, because that will ultimately be what ties us together in terms of managing these disasters into the future. So I think that that's like the next, that's where we need to go next. For my, yeah.
Ryan, can I add just one thing? I just want to say thanks, Dan. That's it's an issue I've worked on really closely. You articulated it so well. Thank you for raising those points, and thank you also, Farmer from Milton. I forgot your name, but for Buster. We never solved anything except by complaining about it a lot and then getting at a table and talking about it. And I really appreciate that both of you mentioned that collaborative conversation, which we have to do so much more of. So, I really appreciate you guys pointing out these issues so well and then being open to talking through them. I don't see any other way than doing much more of that with each other.
Well, I want to thank everybody on the panel. I want to thank Karen and Sean. In just a few observations listening, the challenges we face are really significant. Housing, quality of our education, affordability, healthcare, our environment. What I love about Vermont is, number one, most of us Vermonters don't know better. We just get up, face the day, and what do we got to do, and let's get doing it, right? Because if you started thinking about how tough it is, you might just pull the covers over your head. We don't do that. But the second thing, your comments really brought this home to me. The goal we have is to make it better. We don't have an expectation that it's going to be easy to make it better, but we want to do the work and we want to do it together to make it better. We don't want to just fight about what the problem is. We think you get progress with more cooperation, with consultation, with mutual respect. And, all of us have had times in our life when we couldn't quite figure out how we were going to make it from here to there. Sometimes it might have been a personal situation, or it might have been a financial situation. But you get up and face the day. And if you're feeling like you're taking a half a step forward each day, the fact that it's a high mountain you're climbing, you're ready to go. You keep doing it. Where I'm working in DC, that virtue of cooperation, of collaboration, of trying to be in it together to make it to where you need to go, we're losing that. And what I so appreciate about Vermont is we have it and we've got to hang on to it, because I think that's what is going to get us from where we are to where we need to be. There's nothing easy. But you know what? That's not what we're asking for. We're not asking that it be easy. We're asking that we work together to make progress every single day and leave things a bit better when we finish than they were when we started. So this time in the country, with everything that is going on politically, and really with our democracy, in peril. I was in the building when the shot was fired. That was 20 feet from where I was. I was there when the mob was breaking the doors down. And you know what? Even though I was there, I literally didn't believe it was happening. I didn't believe it was happening because this is the United States of America. We have the peaceful transfer of power. We repudiate, we reject violence. That's still in play. And what we understand here is that in order to bring back that cohesiveness that we need, to have the joy of effort, working hard makes you feel good, right? Fighting about nothing makes you feel lousy. So let's do the work. Let's make it better. And we've got folks here that are doing it. So thank you all so much for coming out. Appreciate it.